Hey guys, we're thrilled to have you joining us on our podcast today. We'd like to thank our sponsors, MVP Apparel, Music and Arts, Vic First Zildjian, Synced Up Designs, Milano's Music, IMC, Music for All, MacPack, Music Celebrations International, School Funder, the Arizona Cardinals, Bravo Video Creations LLC, and Yamaha.
Hello, and welcome to the Copper State Marching Podcast, sponsored by the Arizona Marching Band Association. I'm Aaron Vogel.
And I'm Mark Hodge. The Copper State Podcast was created to bring together the Arizona marching band community and to connect, educate, and entertain those involved in this wonderful activity.
Our goal is to introduce our audience to some of our state's wonderful directors, staff members, and adjudicators, and promote our circuit and our season's shows.
In this episode, we will speak with Dan Hoffman and Sierra Rogers, two incredible visual marching arts educators that are based in the Phoenix metro area.
Yeah, and we'll start with Dan. Dan, great to see you, and thanks so much for joining us.
Oh my God, thanks so much for having me. What a pleasure.
Yeah, this is great. And so we're really excited to have you. Let's start with your journey. So how did you get started in the world of marching band? What led you specifically to the role of a visual designer, technician?
Great question. So I am actually born and raised in upstate New York. I went to West Genesee High School, which back in the day, that area of the country was like a BOA powerhouse central. So I grew up very entrenched in like the history and the legacy of marching band. But I entered the program at an interesting time where so many of the programs across the country were getting stronger. And so I knew that we had this legacy of competitive excellence, but we weren't quite at that same level we once were. So that was like the dawn of YouTube when I was in high school. So I was on YouTube, like looking at all these marching band shows, like what is BOA, blah, blah, blah. And I was just so enchanted by everything I saw. And I have this really, this dream of being able to like go out of my comfort zone, go out of New York and gain the skills and knowledge to perhaps return my program to that higher legacy. But what's actually happened is I've just blossomed into an entirely unexpected life path where I'm still doing the visual thing, but I'm quite far away from New York. So through marching drum corps with the Boston Crusaders, through teaching drum corps with the Oregon Crusaders and the Madison Scouts, somehow that's landed me here in Arizona for the last 7 years. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
I'm a fellow upstater, so Buffalo.
No way. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Ithaca. I went to Ithaca College, so I remember, when the student teaching placements came out, it was like Selection Sunday, and the band student teachers, like they all wanted West Genesee. That was like the prize jewel of student teaching. So I remember that well.
Small world. This will be a separate dialogue after this, but yeah.
So our tagline for this episode is visual do's and don'ts. So let's start with the positives. What are some of the top visual do's when teaching marching and movement fundamentals, especially to beginners or more novice performers? A lot of kids listen to the podcast, so we kind of want to encourage them on what the do's are.
Yes. Well, okay. So I feel like I want to speak to students, but I also want to speak to the staff members because I was this really interesting case as a student where marching band was my first time ever moving my body. So I had zero physical coordination. I had zero physical stamina, but I had such a passion and interest in it. So I wanted to be good. And I think sometimes I was a terrible marcher. I was a terrible mover. I was a terrible anything. And sometimes there were certain staff members that misperceived my lack of excellence as a lack of effort, or as a lack of desiring for wanting to learn. So broadly speaking, teachers, do what you can to curate and cultivate and encourage that passion. Just assume that your students will not listen to you until they are sure that you are on their side, that you want them to have a good experience, that your goal isn't just to make them obey you, like you're the adult with the power and you get to put them down. Let them know that like we're on the same level here, or like maybe I'm on a higher level just because I have more experience and wisdom, but like I'm not using that to hurt you. I'm using that to help you. Like this is a cool thing. Why else would I do this? Why would I spend my time here if this wasn't worthwhile? I think some adults and staff members take that idea for granted, and then that just starts us off on the wrong path. Similarly, for students, I think the best things we can do is to just trust that our staff members have our best interests in mind. That if they tell us to do something, it's not because they hate us. It's not because that they want us to feel bad or to be exhausted. It's like there's a purpose for doing this exercise over and over again. And you can always ask a question. You can always ask for why. I think having more of an understanding of why and a more transparent sharing of that from students to staff and staff to students, I think sets everyone up for more success.
Yeah, that's a great point. The earlier point about the staff members and your advice for them is that classic adage in teaching of, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And sometimes in our activity, well, most of the time in our activity, it's like merit based, so you're climbing the ladder, you're trying to get to be the section leader, you want to be the squad leader, you want to be the drum major, you want to be the soloist. And then from a staff member it sounds like what you're suggesting is, hey, let's not look at merit in terms of how we treat the kids. Let's treat the kids like they all want to be there. They're all great. And even our novice performers, because, hey, at some point, our most novice performer might be leading the visual block in 10 years, 15 years. So yeah, just because they didn't get it at first from a fellow person who was terrible when I started, particularly in the marching.
So I think back in the 80s, we were born great. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. So
if you did more push-ups, you would just win.
I'm just kidding. Go find the blade of grass. Wrong one. Go find the nail one. Yeah. That's stuff they did to us.
We definitely got that. Like, you chip a note, there's 10 push-ups, you miss a thing, go run and find me, a stick. Oh, that's the wrong stick. Find another stick.
Yeah.
So
But I really appreciate that, Dan, that you say that, because a lot of times, especially with new directors at new places where they have to overcome the previous director or previous style, that sometimes the process before the product, like how do you treat each kid to get to that point, is the most important thing to build your program, right? And the product will change as your process becomes more prevalent amongst the kids, and the trust and the faith, and that he's not just making me do that, or she's not just making me do that. It's not just a matter of what's the why. It should always be the question, right?
Yeah.
As an instructor, how are you building it? And as a student, staff member or whatever, what's the why from the director, so the staff understands, and then that all is encompassed in how you teach the kids. And that's real important, because the kids hate it when you do it the other way. They really.
Yeah. Can I actually speak about the process before the product? Yeah. So one of my, and this is not like 100, this is not objectively true, but my perspective is that I like to teach where the process will, you go low and slow in the beginning. You really try to distill all of the things you need to teach into its most atomic, discrete elements, and you introduce them intentionally bit by bit over time. And such that it might feel slow in the beginning, but once you teach your students like the rules of marching band, if you will, like this is like an alternate universe where when you're in this rehearsal setting, you're expected to behave like this, stand like this. When this command is given, this is the expectation of how you'll get there. I think we take a lot of these things for granted. And so by the end of the season, we can't elevate our rehearsals because we're still talking when the box is talking, versus teaching from day one. Like, hey, when an instructor or maybe a section leader is speaking, you should train yourselves to like stop talking. And it's not out of obedience, but it's about like, you have to listen. If we can't start from a place of hearing the instructions, we're never going to get anywhere. And I think that's one of those things that can slip through the cracks, and then you're not realizing how big of a problem it is until it's October. So when it comes to like visual rehearsals, when I talk about my first rehearsals in the beginning of a season, like let's say I have 90 minutes to work with. I'm going to divide that into a third and a third and a third. And that's going to be 30 minutes of like stretching and warming up, 30 minutes of let's stand in a block, 30 minutes of let's move across the floors. And nowhere in there is my goal making a perfect marching step, doing 8s and 8s across the floor. My goals are, can you learn in this first third where I'm giving a visual warm up and a stretch? I'm going to stand in the middle and you're going to be in a blob around me. Can we talk about the blob? How do we set up the blob? What is the density of space between us? I usually like to make sure they can't hit each other if they were to swing their arms out. But I might have them say that again.
Helicopter arms from COVID times. Yep.
Helicopter arms. Exactly. Yes. Yes. Or it's like I might have them, hey, get really close to me. Like just get like so super close to me. And like, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, you're so silly right now. We're like the atoms in a solid, like we're so far together. Now, can you expand and be a gas? Can you take up the size of this cafeteria or the size of this field? Like there's so much space between you. Okay, now can we come in the middle and find this liquid form? So I'm teaching them how to be aware of like these different textures and forms. And then from there, that translates into the next portion of the rehearsal. We'll stand in a block and like, hey, we're now going to be still like spaced out, but in this more crystalline structure where you have to get behind someone, you have to get in line with someone, you have to use your eyes. Okay, now go get water and I'll come back and set up a block as fast as you can. So like in a first rehearsal, these are sort of the things that I'm teaching. And I think that layering in those rules one at a time just really makes the whole thing seem a lot less intimidating and really just make sure everyone is on the same page and we're not moving ahead before our youngest, most inexperienced folks are still figuring everything out.
Yeah, and that's such a great point. As you, well, one, I think just from watching you, and for some folks are going to watch this like on YouTube, some folks are going to listen to it on Spotify. Your energy right now, even on the call, you kids are going to want to have a really good rehearsal, or they're going to be drawn into you just because they're gonna match your great energy. So just stating that as a fact, in terms of a positive dude thing for the folks that are listening, make sure that you are authentically you, but make sure you're engaging. Like you got to be interesting to the kids, especially in the TikTok generations, And then Dan, you had mentioned a couple of don'ts, like don't go too fast, don't forget about like the rehearsal etiquette. Like you're teaching how we rehearse. That's probably it sounds like that's your primary objective for all things, especially at the beginning of the year. Are there any other kind of don'ts that you would recommend, like common mistakes you've seen from techs or instructors, or things that kill momentum or waste time from instructors?
One big don't when it comes to specifically the visual caption or like the with the horn line is like focusing too much on like leg shape and technique. This was something that I fell victim to when I first started teaching because I wanted to prove how much information I knew. So let me talk about everything. Like, oh, none of your legs are straight. First of all, is that even the definition of technique? Second of all, how it sometimes we mistake like a lack of a straight leg or a lack of a bent leg, depending on the technique, as sort of a lack of trying. But sometimes they are trying, and it's just that they don't have the flexibility yet, or they don't have the musculature yet. So making sure we're not admonishing them for externalizing the wrong shape or the wrong thing, but we're trying to assess their energy, their intention, their approach behind what they're doing, and then validating when it is in the correct trajectory or it's in the correct way, and then just maybe enhancing with some extra little information, like keep on coming back to that approach so that way in future rehearsals you'll get stronger and more likely to actually achieve this at what we're looking for. More broadly, I think what that speaks to is this idea of sometimes we are so fixated on it being excellent from the beginning. Like imagine when you were in first grade and like you were given a coloring book and you were told to like say this inside the lines, and then you get some crayon outside the lines and you have your teacher slap you on the hand and be like, no, you can't color outside the lines. And it's like, are we already from the very beginning like making our students like fear trying and exploring and doing things? Let's get them to love coloring. Let's get them to love trying. Let's get all the color on the canvas, and then trust that later we can sculpt, we can use an eraser, we can start to refine those details. So always empowering energy and giving like effort versus trying to like cut them down or making them afraid to make mistakes. We want them to feel safe, to be vulnerable to make mistakes.
So you talked a little bit about molding them after you've got all the color on the palette, right? That leads into our next question, which is drill cleaning, because we're at the point in the season where the vast majority of people have their third and fourth movement on, and they've not touched the first movement in a couple of weeks, and now they're getting to the point where they're going to be cleaning things. So how do you prioritize what to clean and when to clean it?
That's a good question. I'll first, again, I like to be very big picture philosophical. Um, when we're cleaning, I think we all automatically default to cleaning what's been taught or cleaning the drill as written. I like to ask, let's clean the idea, right? Like sometimes this cover down is crappy. And so is the method to spend 30 minutes trying to clean that? Or is the method to be like, well, no one's even supposed to be looking over there anyways. So like they're supposed to be looking at the visual focus on side one. So like this, can I sequentialize it? Can I make it a ripple? Can I make it some sort of process? Is there something in the show that's evoking some sort of like emotional feel so that maybe more of this certain characterization body that's specifically out of tempo, that specifically lets them look to where they're going? Maybe that's what we're cleaning. So it's noticing what moments are most exposed, first of all. And then second of all, deciding, okay, what will take more time? Teaching them a new process and a new, like cleaning the idea, or cleaning what's actually been taught already.
That's a great suggestion.
The question came to mind as you were talking about that. Because I think you're thinking of the bands that are at like this level, right? What about those ones here, right? At the lower end who are just starting? Like, how do you incorporate a visual movement in the show? Because for a lot of them, it's just getting from point A to point B, playing the music and not crashing along the way, right? So like how do we teach them to have a visual movement when they're just barely confident in the A to B, right? So like
yes, great question. And let me just speak briefly onto the sheets. Like when I'm adjudicating in the visual performance ensemble caption or in the GE caption, I'm going to take note of the range of like visual design choices that you've made or composition choices. So like drill versus staging, like where you are on the field loosely, your dance and movement, and your characterization of theatricality. You don't have to employ all four of those things. If you do, that increases your ceiling of that I can credit you in terms of range. But oh my gosh, it is so fine to only do drill, to only march and play and halt. Like that is fine. Especially if you can do that where everyone steps off at the same time and everyone closes their feet at the same time. Bonus points if you can have an even size step through time and a straight line pathway. Like I think sometimes these things are considered boring, but my God, there is such an effect generated.
When they're done well, they're not boring. When they're done well, it's very effective. Yeah.
When there are 31A bands back to back to back, and you're like one of five that can actually march in time, no offense. I'm not saying that with any shade. It's just like literally it does stick out as like, wow, you are excellent. And now I can start to actually see what you're not doing and maybe talk about that. But excellence. So to answer your question, what advice would I give those groups? First of all, tracking blocks. If you're not already aware of that concept, having your kids stand in a block and just sort of take these micro steps as a block, and they're basically marching the count structure. Maybe you're not even playing the music. Maybe you're playing the music rhythmically, but on concert F, something like that. And you're just
marching and sorry to interject, but marching and halting. So when they only move when they move in the drill, and then they got a halt in the block. And of course, you'll see a couple kids keep going, and then they get that really immediate feedback when they march into the back. The trombone player marches into the back of the person in front of them. They're like, oh, maybe I should start halting there. So we always call that starts and stops. Can you just get your starts and stops in?
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
You sound like my judging tape from last weekend. Starts and stops.
Yeah, and I just want to echo what both Mark and Dan said about excellence. I mean, so GE, like I'm judging more and more GE. Excellence is the first and truest and purest effect. Like if you're really good at what you're doing out there, that in itself is going to be very, very effective. So if you're just marching and playing, then march and play really, really well. To Dan's earlier point where he was like, don't be afraid if you've got this really hard move that's just not working. It's okay to blow it up. I remember that really distinctly on, one of my, former programs where we had this really hard move that we tried. It didn't work. And it was like, the visual guys on the team who were great. They're like, you know what? Just let's do a sequential flutter. So they had the kids flutter from the outside to inside and get to your next set as fast as you possibly can. And then we're going to teach you like a real easy, like sequential visual move. Every kid had more or less like 4 counts of responsibility. It was so cool. That was one of the most visually effective parts of the show. And it was just because we couldn't achieve what was originally written. So they blew it up and made it easier and made it more effective.
And I would add to that, watching a few of the 1A bands where they're doing a drill move to this spot, park and blow, drill move to this spot, park and blow. And then that time they're in the park and blow, they could expand and contract to make that visual movement more visual. And it's simple, 8 counts out, 8 counts back in, because that's effective and the starts and stops are easily taught, right? So then they don't have as many park and blows. So same thing.
Absolutely.
Well, Dan, this has been great to chat with you a little bit. We're coming to the end of our time together. And typically what we do at the end here, well, it's been a tradition since we started the podcast, is to do shout outs. So this is a time for you to just shout out people in your career, educators, colleagues, or any shout outs at all. So do you have any shout outs that you'd like to give?
Oh man. First of all, I want to shout out Missy Full-Smith. She was my dance teacher in college. I entered that program as someone who's never moved my body before other than marching band. And she very much gave me grace in terms of my lack of technical excellence, but it's the information and the creativity and the very holistic approach to the body that made me excited to move and dance. And now here I am 10 years later feeling actual, like those seeds that have been planted have now sprouted. So I really appreciate her for that. And I also really want to shout out Martin Hebda, the current director at Casa Grande Union High School. I taught there for a number of years when I first moved here. And what I learned from him was that if you focus on the culture, if you focus on the people, if you focus on the way we respect each other and treat each other, if you focus on the process, the excellence will follow. But it was just such a different approach working under him as compared to other programs where I felt often doubted or mistrusted. And that's no fault to those other directors, but it was so interesting to feel the space to actually like be trusted. And that includes making mistakes. I learned from those mistakes and got the program better because of that. So any new directors out there, reach out to Mr. Hebda. He will, not to obligate his time or volunteer his time for you, but he can teach you a lot.
And Mercedes too, right? Mercedes.
Oh my God, Mercedes. Talk about a queen. Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. I knew that was going to come.
Love that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey man, well thanks so much again for joining us, and just wishing you the best as you conclude your own design and adjudication season here in the next few weeks.
Thank y'all so much. I hope to be back sometime soon. Let's see.
Great. Thanks for your time. We'll see you on the field.
Absolutely.
That's it. Thanks, Dan. Sierra, it's so great to see you, and thanks you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we wanted to start out this with, for folks that might not know you, just tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started in the world of marching band, and what led you specifically to the role of a visual designer, staff member, technician?
Yeah, so I'm from Casa Grande, Arizona originally, and I think I got into marching band the way that we all kind of do, of like my friends and family were involved. So I did band from 5th grade all the way through college. I went to Arizona State, go Devils, and I was a tuba major during those years. I marched with the Academy for 8 years from 2012 to 2019. I spent 5 years on contra and 3 as drum major, and I knew that I just wanted to continue to be in this activity, and visual was the part that I always really enjoyed. So as soon as I aged out, I ended up on board at the Madison Scouts for 5 years, and now I'm going to be teaching at the Mandarins, as well as a lot of groups in the state of Arizona.
Well, that's great. The tagline for our episode today is visual do's and don'ts. So let's start with the positive. What are some of your top visual do's when teaching in marching and movement?
Yeah, so like my number one priority, and the thing that I always tell younger teachers, is that visual is something that is inherently really embarrassing to try for the first time. So the more that you can make it fun and make it a game and make it accessible, and just like rewarding creativity is huge, because we want everybody to look uniform. but it starts by having to feel really kind of different from what you're used to. So making everything that you do about awareness of the body, and really, like I said, like making sure that creativity is a part of everything that you're doing. So that's like my biggest do, like make it fun, make it accessible, make it creative, and then mold from there.
Do you have any specific, that's great advice. Do you have any specific, like, hey, this is something that has worked really well for me. Kids seem to love it. Like you play tunes, or what are some of those fun things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just take it back to like elementary school music classes, and we do a lot of like across the floors, like here's five people in a line leaving at once. We put on like pop tunes or just like I like to introduce my favorite music during that time. Like I'll put on a lot of like 90s dad rock and whatever, but just music
Yes.
that has there's nothing like watching people walk across the floors to Creed. But like just putting on music and having them walk in time and then incorporating something as simple as like clapping in halftime in a square, adding in rhythmic components on top of that as well, and then just like adding in more and more coordination stuff so that you're learning awareness of the body without it having to be so defined and like worried about being perfect right away.
Tell us more about that. The clapping half notes in a square. Are you doing that as they're going across the floor? So that's like left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
So it's just like you put on a song, any tempo that feels comfortable. 120 is my go-to. And as they walk across, their feet are moving in the single time and they're just clapping 1, 3, 5, 7 with their left foot. And then once that becomes a little bit more achievable and a little bit more together, you can have them listen for like the fact that they're moving together as well as feeling if they're moving together. And you can start to layer in more complex rhythms. You can add in ba 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 ba, or you could start to go into offbeats too. It really depends on like the level of the group that you're teaching and how far you can push them in that time.
Great idea. Yeah.
Great.
On the flip side of that, can you think of any, like, hey, visual don'ts, like instructors don't, I tried this, it fell flat, some ideas or things you've seen that you would not recommend?
Immediately jumping into the stuff that you've seen the top groups in the nation do in terms of vocabulary. I have tried that before. I'm like, hey, let's go out there and let's do a sit roll right away on day one of band camp. And like maybe some groups that works really well, but most of the time it's a skill that they'll use maybe once if
Mhm.
you are the one to put it into the show. And it's not even really going to be that effective in the long run. So like jumping into like the overly complex, like advanced skill sets too early without learning the basics first. I would avoid that at all costs. It's better to be simple and like actually understand what you're doing than go for too complicated and not achievable.
Yeah. So you mean the thing that you just aged out from the Blue Devils that you thought was really cool? Maybe that's not something you should do with your first band job as a visual tech.
Maybe
Yeah.
not right on day one, you know,
Yeah.
maybe that's like you get to the end of the season and they're ready for another challenge and you can like pull from that experience, but it it's so easy to be excited at the beginning of the season and want to jump headlong into this because there's no visual curriculum that's just available through the state of Arizona like there's a music curriculum
Mhm.
that you could pull from. And so when you're trying to design that in your own head and you're pulling from your own experiences and you did just age out from a drum corps or an indoor drum line, you're like, well, this is what I just did. Obviously, my students can do this. And that's just not always the case.
Yeah. So, like right now, design trends are constantly changing. What are some of the visual trends you've seen emerge in recent years? And how do you feel about where the activity is heading?
It's so crazy how quickly visual trends change over time. I think even just from the time that I was in high school and starting off with drum corps back in like the early 2010s to now, it's just like a completely different activity. And in some ways, we're kind of going back around to some of the things that were more in trend back then. Like the vintage effect is kind of hitting the visual scene. Because I think late 2010s we got like the huge resurgence of like we're using fluttering transitions, we're using non-traditional marching techniques, we're using a lot of performance-based techniques to kind of get rid of some of the more marching sets and more of the more like early 2000s Cavaliers style drill, in a way to make it more accessible for the students and to just provide more variety. But I'm starting to see us go back around towards like, this is drill for drill's sake. It's really mathy and it's really complex, and more like what I was saying, like the 2000s like Cavaliers drill. So there's kind of a resurgence of that I'm seeing, but then there's also more of a reliance on individualized character moments for students. So not just like your typical fluttering, running out of time from place to place, but like actually embodying this type of texture, being a little bit more unique in how you're characterizing your motions. I think it's really cool too. It gives that opportunity for performance that we didn't really have 10 or so years ago.
Question tied to that, as a teacher of visual elements. Division 1A band, just happy to be there. What's a visual element that you would teach them to impact their show? Just one.
Oh, that is such a hard question. Well,
I'm here to
will you
ask the
say that
hard
one more
ones.
time? Yeah.
Okay, so I am envisioning like new band director, rural community, just being on the field and doing set A to set F in time, step starts and stops, getting that correctly. What is the first visual thing you would teach them to enhance their show? Because I think only one thing is what they want to do because they don't have that history of doing visual content.
Absolutely. The thing that always strikes me the most when I'm watching other programs, and it's something that I try and bring into my own because it always feels so cool, is like things that make the students look and feel particularly athletic. So I would say like if you're starting from nothing in terms of non-traditional movement, like just introducing like this is how an athletic run is going to look. And we're going to not worry about pointing our toes so much or like having a specific leg shape or not moving our arms, but like what does it feel like to change velocity at a really rapid pace
Hmm.
that feels like a sudden break into texture? And that way as well, like most kids have run at hopefully at some point in their lives, they've been running around a little bit. And so it's something that they already know, and you can just continue to add more layers on top of that.
So
Just to
Sierra,
give it a little bit more.
I have a visual of that 2013 Academy, the tuba run in the back. You remember that? Oh
No,
my God.
don't.
You guys came from both sides of the field to get together in the middle, and it was like 4 to 4, like 4 steps per. I just remember being amazed that you guys pulled it off. So nothing that extravagant, but I just, as soon as you started talking about that, I was like, okay, you've actually lived that.
Yes.
So
Oh, there are very few things that I would recommend to my students doing that I haven't done myself in some form or fashion. So,
that's great.
We're kind of speaking about that, nostalgia or memory. Is there a favorite, like from your time, either marching or from your time as a drum major? Do you have like a favorite memory, especially like from a visual memory where you're like, this was really, really cool. It felt good doing it. We got a response from the crowd, that kind of thing.
um, I think the one that sticks out in my mind is the beginning of the 2019 Academy show. They had like this really extended like drum break, but then right when the brass came in, it was just one line at a time at a 4 to 5 jazz running across the field, just playing like this loud music. It was so exciting. Huge pop of like color from the guard over on the other side of the field. And it was just like, ah, it from like a visual moment perspective is just so fun to watch and so hard. Like it was so challenging. And you just have to appreciate that every time you see something that you're like, I know somebody worked really hard to make this happen and to make it right. Gosh, the appreciation is just off the charts.
Yeah, so different effects. So that was like a really cool. The challenge was that it was something that was challenging, was effective,
Mhm.
and it was performed well. Now, of course, as you stated, like, we have multifaceted challenges. So there's a drill effect just for drill. There's a body movement effect. There's this characterization. So these kind of newer things in a way, like body movement or characterization, you have some best practices in incorporating those skills into traditional marching, especially thinking about the directors who, they can do their basics block, but beyond that, they might be somewhat limited on how they would begin to teach body movement or characterization. How would you recommend them starting that out?
I would start with like the simplest ideas first, and you'll usually find that in like traditional ballet classes, and you can find a lot of resources on YouTube. I am primarily a YouTube taught dancer in any way, shape, or form. But like going in, I would also go in and watch like there are some really incredible Texas marching bands that I think don't do anything that's that demanding on an individual level, but the way that they use layering to create effect is so just like clever. And that way you're teaching all the students here are the same three pictures, but based off of this drill set that we're in, we're going to layer it so that one group starts, it's like a cannon, right? Like you start it here on one, the next group starts on three, the next group starts on five, but they're really only doing three things each, and it lasts you so much longer. So that's like the number one best practice for me is like keep it as simple as possible because we all recognize those shapes because they're easy to teach and they're easy to come back to and build off of once your students know them. But using layering to make it feel like it's taking up more time than it might inherently take.
That's a great
Another question.
suggestion.
Yeah, great. Another question for you is how do you work with other staff, directors, designers, techs to create a cohesive, impactful visual product?
I think it really depends on the program. I think everybody communicates in such different ways. For me, like the open door policy of like we all have eyes and we all have opinions and we all want what's best for the students. So there are no wrong opinions. There's just dialogue that happens. And as long as somebody is responsible for making the call at the end of the day, then it's great to have like a conversation about like what is working really well for our students in our program, what is not, and how do we continue to challenge them while scaffolding all of this knowledge upwards towards what we want them to be next year as well.
Right.
That makes sense. Hey, so we've been talking about like what, some good practices for teachers. Kind of think about this next one for a young tech, like, that visual tech, perhaps, we're talking about earlier in the
Just
call.
graduated last year. Wants to
The age out of the Blue Devils, that kind of thing. What advice would you get them if they want to, they want to just get starting out or they want to get into this activity at a more serious level? What would you recommend to them? What advice?
You're not going to be able to feel like you're a great educator the first year. So you shouldn't let that hold you back from going out and doing it anyway. If you're waiting to be ready to be a teacher, you're always going to be waiting. So just go out and try your best. And as long as you're actively pushing yourself to be great at what you do, you will get better and better and better every year. And you should surround yourself with people who are genuinely rooting for you and are going to hold you to a high standard. Because those are the people that'll look at you at the end of that block where you taught only 2 pages of drill and say, there's a better way to do this. We're going to work through this together. The goal is that we have X or Y 10 pages of drill next time. Let's brainstorm this together instead of just letting you flounder on your own. So don't wait, try it anyway, but have people around you that will force you to get better when you have those setbacks.
Yeah, I love that. And reach out to Sierra, reach out to Dan, Mark or I, or people in a more experienced position love to be mentors, and so reach out. They'll answer your questions. I think, in my experience.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead, Mark, with the shout outs.
Yeah. So this is the part where we do shout outs, people in your backstory that you want to give credit to for helping you be where you're at, and anybody you want to mention, a list of people, a couple people, whatever.
Oh man. Okay, well, number one on this list has to be Ryan Springler. He was my very first visual instructor when I was a freshman in high school. He also taught me in drum corps. He got me one of my first visual jobs. He was one of my greatest mentors. He's just kind of been around for so much of my development, and I've learned so much from him, in particular for like how to build confidence in students when you're trying something that means you're going to fail a lot. So, huge shout out to Ryan. I would also love to shout out Martin Hebda, who is, I think, one of the most incredible educators I've ever seen. He taught me in high school. He's still with Casa Grande Union High School. And he is organized to the point where it kind of scares me sometimes. But he's one of those people that just, he has the highest standards, but he is so kind to you and kind to the people who are really working to reach those standards. So those are my two like biggest shout outs, as well as my family. My whole family is involved with marching stuff. My brother runs Flux indoor percussion, and my mom has also been involved in every marching thing possible for
She's
many
Suvi Queen.
years.
She's the Suvi Queen.
She is. She
Yeah.
is. She is the backbone of so many parts of our community, and I'm just very grateful to be able to be part of that family and see how they've been kind of changing what we do as well.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Great shout outs. Two shout outs on this pod for Martin Hebda, because Dan also gave a shout out to Martin. So we'll send them a text and be like, hey man, you're gonna get a lot of positive vibes from this one. Thank you, Sierra, for joining us. To everyone who's been listening to this pod and to the other ones, thanks for joining us, and just wishing good skill to all the bands that are attending our organization's first ever regional championships. We've got the Central Region Championships at Basha High School, and the Southern Region Champs at Ironwood High School, and those are both on Saturday, October 25th.
Remember, that's
And then
Ironwood Ridge, not Ironwood.
Yeah, Ironwood Ridge.
There you
Ironwood
go.
Ridge. Your old stomping ground, right, Mark?
Yes, sir. That's why I had
Yeah.
to make sure you corrected, because Ironwood is in Glendale. Just saying.
Yes. Well, yeah. So yeah, Central at Basha, and then Southern Region at Ironwood Ridge High School. Yeah, both on this Saturday, October 25th. And then the Northern Region Champs and the U of A Band Day, and those are on Saturday, November 1st.
And then also at the Southern Region, one of the things we're adding this season is in the lot. I'll be running around in the lot during warm-ups and things like that as you guys get there to perform, and just be interviewing students about your experience with the season this year and marching band in general and AZMBA. So we're looking forward to see you in the lot, and can't wait to finish out the season. Bandtober is coming to a close.
Yes, it is. Hey, thank you, Sierra. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.